Hello, good morning. My name is André Henriques, and on behalf of ESPON Transnational Outreach, welcome you to this training on the ESPON Database portal. This training activity will take place via two webinars, today and tomorrow, where we will have the opportunity to know better the data and indicators available on this open portal. And also tomorrow, we'll have a crash course on data visualization. The session today will be moderated by Efren Larrea from MCRIT, supported by Martin Gauck, Policy Officer from ESPON EGTC. In the audience today, we have a mixed group of policymakers, journalists, and media outlets, and academics and researchers. We will start now with an introduction about the work of ESPON from Laurent Frieders. He's the head of unit of evidence and outreach from ESPON EGTC. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining this e-learning. Thank you, Andre, for the introduction. We're very happy to have you with us here this morning. So as Andre said, I'm the head of unit for evidence and outreach here at the ESPON EGTC, which essentially means that together with my team, I work on content and communication of ESPON's work. I'm speaking to you from Luxembourg. Our core team is based in Luxembourg. We have about 22 staff here in Luxembourg, but we work with a very large network of partners across Europe, researchers, consultants, and we support policymakers from all levels, from the local, regional, national to the European level in designing better policies. What I wanted to do before we get started on the database e-learning is just to say a couple of words about ESPON and what we do. So ESPON is about evidence. We are an EU-funded program that provides data analysis and tools to policymakers, and this is really to support policymakers in their work, in giving them a comparative perspective in where their city, their region, or their country is positioned compared to other regions, cities, and countries in Europe, and to help them understand some of the key policy challenges that we face in Europe today. And the main aim of our work really is to allow policymakers to increase the effectiveness of policies at all levels, and also to reinforce cooperation between different territories in Europe. So it's really about supporting policymakers in designing more effective policies that have a certain territorial approach that takes into account how activities are organized in let's say over space, and allow them to take this into account and to design better policies. We are about maps. If you're familiar with some of ESPON's works, you see that we produce a lot of maps. Here on the screen you will see one example. This is a map that we produced to look at the digital transformation of the public sector in Europe. So it's to understand really how public services from transport to healthcare to education are being digitalized in different cities, and what impact this has on the quality of this service and also on the uptake. So what do we do in practical terms? So we organize applied research activities. These are pan-European research activities that try to answer a specific set of questions. We work on economic, social, environmental topics. And it's really to try to bring, as I mentioned, this comparative European perspective to the policy-making process. We also support policymakers, decision-makers, practitioners at all levels with very targeted solutions. These are our so-called targeted analysis, where we respond to the specific demand for a demand to respond to a particular policy challenge, and together with decision makers in cities and regions and across Europe, we design research activities that address this particular policy challenge. And again, it's trying to bring in that comparative perspective to understand also what their peers in other regions and cities are doing. And then finally, we develop tools. So we develop data and indicators. We have a toolbox that allows policymakers access to different data and indicators to support their their policy making. And what you will hear today is an introduction to our database and some of the indicators and mapping that we have in that. So these are all the indicators that we developed through our projects, but also that are available through other sources. And then finally, also here you see another map. So this is some work that we did on cross-border public services, try to understand in which regions in Europe cross-border public services have been implemented and which services they are. So for example, in environment, civil protection and disaster management account for almost 60% of all cross-border public services across Europe. So thank you again for joining this e-learning. I wish you an inspiring day. I will hand you back to Andre. He will talk you through the program for the day. Many thanks.
Thank you, Laurent. Thank you very much. So now, before giving the floor to our other speakers of today, I would just like to highlight some details, some logistical details about the next sessions. So this webinar is being recorded, video recorded, and it will be available for your visualization afterwards on ESPON website. Also, the slides from each of the speakers will be available for your download on the respective page of the event where you registered, and also we are sharing it in a follow-up email. For your questions and answers about the session today and tomorrow. So during the presentations, you can write directly your questions on the tab questions on your screen of the web GoToWebinar, and we will raise your questions when the presentation is finished. During the questions and answers session, if you wish, you can also press the raise your hand button, and we'll give the floor to you to ask your question directly by unmuting your microphone. So now I will give the floor to our first to the presenter of today, Efren Larrea. Efren is he's an engineer from the Polytechnic University of Catalonia. He's a specialist in data collection and analysis, spatial statistics and spatial economics, GIS systems, and the development of forecast models. Efren coordinates projects in systems designs, indicators definition and testing, and has developed user guides, tutorials, and developers handbooks. He is now involved in several projects with ESPON. Efren, I will now give the floor to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Andre, and welcome everyone. I'm going to share now my screen. Okay. You should be seeing now my main screen, I hope.
Yes.
Great. So the session of today is to present you the new ESPON database, because as some of you maybe know already, ESPON already had an older version of the database, because it's been collecting lots and lots of information from the different applied research projects that they have produced during almost the last 20 years. And this has generated lots and lots of data and maps. And all this information is available usually directly from each one of the projects, but it has also been systematized in a way that it can be accessed, let's say, more easily. However, the old version of the database, was a bit old, a bit outdated, and so it was time for a renewal, and that's what we're going to present here today. So this new version of the database, which just a small disclaimer here, is not yet finished. Content-wise, it's still being filled in, because as soon as a new project is finished, the data is uploaded to the system and made available to the public. But also let's say that the application itself is not yet closed. The project for developing the database still goes on for one more year, although the idea is to have the system ready to be launched by this next summer. I just say that because during the presentation of today, and when you test the system by yourselves afterwards, you might find that some things maybe don't work, they don't respond properly, mainly because the application is not yet in a production server, meaning that it cannot handle lots of queries at the same time from different users. So in the presentation we did today in Brussels, we had this problem that everyone accessed the system at the same time, asking for a map, and the system took a long time to respond and to show it. So don't despair. The system will be working properly once it's officially launched. And so let's have a look at what we have here, with the idea of you to get knowledge about this system, and also very useful for us to get also your feedback, whether you can easily understand what we are presenting here, whether you think that the database is well organized, the user interface is useful or not, if you think there's something missing, something that should be changed. All this kind of input will help us to improve this product that, as I said, is not yet finished. So there's this room for improvement. With that being said, let's just start with the database. Now you are seeing the main screen of the system. We are still lacking a landing page that will show basic description of what we can find here, and maybe some glossary about the different terms that will be used throughout the website. It won't be too much, but there are some specific elements that have to be described. And then we are seeing here what we call the main data section. This is the actual database. Here we have a table with the list of all the existing indicators on the database. Right now we have a total of about, let's say, I think it's 700 something different elements that come from all kinds of projects, dating back, as I said, almost 20 years ago, some of them, but of course the bulk of data is much more recent. Okay, the interface also has two other elements that we call the project archives and the resources. We'll get to that later, but these are all kinds of other informations that are complementary to the indicators, which have to do with the projects themselves, the projects that originated the data, and some other complementary resources that might be useful to prepare maps, to, well, some other kind of documents that complement this database. And all of these will be easily accessed on this interface. Let's go now to the main data section. So here we have, as I said, a table that summarizes the contents of the database. It's generated in real time, so every time you access it, you will see the newest contents being uploaded here. By default, it's shown alphabetically sorted. You can change that just by clicking on the heading, and then it orders itself in alphabetically descending order. Okay. Let's have a review of the different elements we have here, so that everything is clear. The first element, of course, is the name. This is something that comes directly from the project themselves. So the people that are in charge of developing a project are also in charge of delivering the data to the database, which means that they have to take some steps to prepare their data, select the relevant indicators, and upload it to the system using a specific section of the portal that won't be accessible to the general users. And so let's say that the data is properly uploaded to the system because the people that created it are the ones responsible to handle it. And as I said, the names that we see here are the ones proposed by the people that develop the data sets. Apart from the name, we have the second column, which is the indicator type. This is something a bit internal to our system, but nevertheless, it's relevant to have a look at it. The data that we have in the system is divided into three big broad groups. We have, for one, what we call the base indicators, which are the ones shown with a circle and a dot inside. These base indicators are long time series that come usually from Eurostat, and that serve as basis in most of the ESPON projects for building other derivate indicators, which are the main result, main output of the different ESPON projects. We are not simply replicating here what we have in Eurostat, because that does not have any added value, of course. But the thing is that when uploading this data from Eurostat here, we try to complete the data, because many times this time series have data gaps for some countries, for some specific regions, for different years. And so we apply here a set of statistical methods to fill in these gaps. So the added value here is that you get a series of data for these base indicators, which are about 40. I think it's about 40 indicators that cover a wide range of different thematics. And as I said, the added value here is that of course we have all of them together in the same format, and that the series are completed through statistical methodologies. Apart from these base indicators, we get the start ones, which are the key indicators. This is what the people in charge of projects from ESPON projects decide that are the main outputs of their research. Okay, so a project may produce or handle between 50 to 100 or 200 different indicators, and from this wide amount of possible indicators, the project selects the ones that are most relevant and the ones that are more related to the spirit of the project, so to say. So those we can find here in the database marked with this star, and these kind of indicators will be the ones that you might not see anywhere else, because this is genuinely new ESPON data. Complementary to that, we have the indicators with the dashed circle and the dot inside, which are the background indicators. These are all the complementary indicators that the project uses and needs in order to build the key indicators. And this is something that the project managers also report to the database, but they flag them as background indicators, meaning that they are not so relevant for the project itself, although they might be relevant to you. So that's why we also have them here, because you might be interested into the contents of one of these background indicators, even if it's not flagged as key result for a given project. So as a summary, we have the background indicators and the base indicators that are used to produce the key indicators in the different projects. But as I said, this distinction might not be even relevant to you, the end user of the database, because you simply have all the data here. Okay, so of course, if you want, you'll see how we can filter them out by typology. And this is some information that we have here in the system, but it's not something absolutely necessary for you to use the interface. Now we have another column which is called data. This is an icon that indicates us whether there's data attached to an indicator or not. Of course, you would expect that all indicators that we have here in the system do have data available attached, but it might not be the case sometimes. As I said, the database is a live system and it's being populated constantly. So this means that at some point you might access the system. One of the projects might have already uploaded or prepared the structure for a given indicator, but it might not have data available yet because the backend of the system has not processed everything. So you don't see this small icon to indicate that you have data available to download. And also, it might happen that some elements would never have this icon available. And this has to do with the way in which we have structured the indicators in the system. If you see in the second row of the table, we have a small triangle, and this indicates an indicator which can be unfolded, because certain indicators are very related to one another. Let's go to one example a bit lower. If we get to the time series for deaths by age group and gender, and we unfold this, we see that we have different, that's what we call dimensions associated to that. So this deaths by age group and gender is broken down in two different groups. One is death by age group and gender. Again, we are repeating the same element that we had before on the heading. And another one, which is death by age groups. So in one case, we have two dimensions at the same time, which is age group and gender, and a second one is by age group. This second one, of course, is an aggregate of the first subdivision, but this is how data comes and how it has been collected. Within each one of these dimensions, if we unfold it, we get all the different classes associated to that specific dimension. So if the dimension is age groups, we have an individual indicator for each one of the age groups, and each one of these rows here will be a set of data for that specific age group. And as you may see, it makes sense to have everything grouped here because they refer to the same dimension within the same indicator. That's why we have this structure. And as it happens, we do have data at what we call the class level. So this specific age group does have information associated to it, but the dimension itself does not have information associated to it, which is why we don't have this icon. In any case, whenever you see this icon, it means that you have some data there that you can explore, download, and work with it. In some cases, like this second row here, aging index of total population, you see that I can unfold it and I can see the different classes and dimensions associated. And you may see also that the first level, what we call the multi-indicator, does have data associated to it. And this will happen in some cases whenever data is available. The database itself is not doing any new computations. So it's a task of the project, of each one of the ESPON projects, to deliver data at the different possible levels. So if you see that data is not available for a certain aggregation, it's because it was not provided as such. Okay, and it's not a task of the, let's say, of the interface of the database to complete this kind of data, because it's not something that can be easily automated. Okay. Now we have two more columns here on the main table. One of it is the period, which tells us the years that are covered by that indicator, and another one which is the territorial levels at which the indicator is available. So for the period, you may see that we have already in these first three rows, we have the different options to show time periods. You may get years separated by commas, indicating that data is available for those specific years, and they will be explicited here one by one. Whenever we have a complete time period without any gap, we abbreviate things by showing, as in the second case, 1990 to 2016. Okay. If the series was broken and for instance, we didn't have data for year 2007 for this indicator, then we would get something similar to 1990 to 2006, comma, 2008 to 2016. Okay, so this is handled automatically by the system and tries to summarize you what period is covered by each of the indicators. And last, we have the third example here, which is years separated by a bar. And this indicates that, in fact, we don't have data for those specific years, but what we have stored on the system is the variation between the years that are indicated here. So for this indicator, it means that what we have stored is the variation between years 2071 up to 2100. Okay, so this means that there will be an absolute or relative variation stored on the system. Of course, this is something that sometimes can be easily calculated from time series. For instance, if you have the time series of population, you can easily calculate this variation between 2 years. But for some specific indicators that are the output of ESPON projects, such as this third example here, so aggregate impact of climate change, the direct output of the project and the models behind it is in this case the variation for these years. There are some examples in which, like this one, crude rate of natural change, that show us that we have stored on the system 2 variations. So in this case, we have the relative variation for the period 2004 up to 2007, and then another column with data that will have the variation between 2012 and 2015. That's all in relation to the time period. And then we have the territorial levels. So the idea is that the data that we have on the database is somehow systematized in its spatial coverage, showing the information at the different statistical units that are available for Europe. This means that usually the data will be available at NUTS 0, 1, 2, or 3 level. Okay, but the system is not limited to that. The system will include in the future, once they are available, indicators at city level, functional urban area level, urban morphological zones. We have all sorts of other possible municipalities, for instance, local area units. So there are lots of other type of territorial levels that can be handled by the system, and for which you will find information. Whenever one of these other levels is available, you will see that in this column about the levels of information available for an indicator. Many indicators are only available at one NUTS level, but others have been aggregated at other levels. As I said, it's not a task of the database itself to generate aggregated values. This is a task of the project itself. So this means that sometimes for instance, this first indicator was calculated by the project at NUTS 3 and also aggregated at NUTS 2 level, and that's why we offer it on the database. While the third one is only available at NUTS 3, and of course, maybe you could make aggregations afterwards, but that depends a lot on the indicator, because sometimes you have to make averages, sometimes you have to add up values, so that depends. Okay, but we just offer you the data that was produced by those projects. So now that we have reviewed the contents of the table and what we can see, now we can start looking for elements. We have 2 ways of doing that. One, which might be the easiest one, is to just filter by keyword. We have here a place where we can input something, And let me go to one possible example. Let's say that you're looking for information or indicators related to, let's say, green economy. So I can simply type green here, and the system automatically filters all the elements that contain the concept or the string green within the name that we are getting here. So you see that we have several elements that have been found, and now we are going to just open one of them. Let's select this, the number of green tech clusters per million inhabitants. This is a key indicator that has data associated to it for year 2013, and it's available at NUTS2 level. If we click anywhere on the row, we will get a new window that shows us basic information of the indicator in terms of metadata. You see here that we have an ID, the code of the indicator, the name, its units, the territorial level at which it is available. Also very relevant, associated to the territorial level, in this case NUTS2, we also have an information about the version of NUTS at which this indicator has been produced. And this is critical in order to map and to work with this indicator afterwards, because whenever you prepare a map, if the territorial units do not match the data you have, then you will have lots of holes on the system. I suppose many of you know it, but the NUTS version it's a statistical classification of the territory, which is it's official and sanctioned by each one of the member states, but it changes from time to time. Every 3 years there's a revision, and some of these NUTS change in contour and on labels. So that means that versions of different years are not directly compatible, at least not for all the units, which is why we need this kind of information on the metadata to be able to work afterwards with the data behind each one of the indicators. We have other relevant informations of the indicator, and then we have a second tab which is called Explore Data. This is the main window to play with an indicator. Here we have 3 different sections. First one is to prepare graphics, quick views of graphics with the data. The possibility also to make maps with the data. And just below, we have several buttons that allow us to download the information associated to the indicator. Let's start with downloading information for the indicator. You will see that some buttons are, in this case, in red, and you get a hand icon, meaning that you can click on them and get some data. Some other options are grayed out for the time being. As I said, the system is not yet finished. We are still populating contents, and it's not yet available to download data, in this case in Excel format and JSON format. Okay, but we will add other options afterwards. For the time being, we have the possibility to download data as a CSV and as a shape. We won't get into detail on the shape. If you download the shape, you will get a folder with the shape file associated to that NUTS level that is relevant to the indicator. In this case, if we go to the metadata, we see that we have NUTS2 version 2010. So when downloading this shape format, we will get the NUTS2 version 2010 already linked with the data of the indicator. Okay, that's just in case you want simply to quickly map the indicator, you can take it from here. If you want to just to download the pure data to work with it in Excel to compute derivative indicators or other things, we just click here. We are going to get the download. It's a zip file, and if we open the zip file, we get, apart from the WinRAR disclaimer, we get this package of information. And here we have the CSV file, we have the metadata in PDF format, the metadata in XML format, and a README. The README file is simply a description of what you downloaded, information about the indicator itself, and a summary of the different files that you can find inside. Also, it has a description of the different columns that we can see on the CSV file with the data. The metadata in PDF format let's open it, will show you all the basic information about the indicator. In this case, you have the abstract, ID, the status, contacts. This might be relevant because these are the people in charge of having produced this indicator. So if you may need some further explanations about an indicator if it's not well understood, or maybe you need to inquiry something, then those are the people to contact. Although I will show you later, but there's a direct access to the projects themselves. So the first point might be to go to the project web pages to get more information. But afterwards, you can also try to contact the people in charge of producing the indicators. We have here also the information about what we talked about, the NUTS. In this case, it tells us that it's available at NUTS 2 2010, and several other informations about the indicator, the themes it covers, and well, different elements that are relevant to know what you did download. The metadata in XML format, it's a text file that has this specific format, and so it can be automatically embedded into a web application to be displayed and formatted accordingly. But it covers more or less the same contents as the PDF file, but in a format that is machine readable in this case. Last, let's go to the CSV file. Unluckily, CSV files, which are in fact plain text files, are quite handy because they are compatible and you can use them in any system. If you have Excel installed, just by opening it, you might get not the correct result here. Let's try to open it and see what's happening. The thing is that latest versions of Excel, when you just click on a file and it opens it, do not properly format the results, meaning that you get all the data of the different columns in the first column. Okay, and you may see that here. So instead of doing that, that depends on your version of Excel, of course, but the idea is that you go to data, you import from text. Sorry, before that, let me open a new tab. Okay, and we import from text, and there we go to downloads. Okay, downloads. We should have extracted the elements first. We extract that. This will be explained more in detail tomorrow during Martin's presentation, how to deal exactly with the data, but I just wanted to show you already the things that you can already do with the system. Okay, so we get to the data and we will just import it. Okay, it's a limited text file separated by commas. And unfortunately, we have to do one more thing, which is to tell the system that decimals are separated by points, and thousands are separated by commas. This is due to the fact that the database stores numbers in American format, but usually our Excel systems are European based in terms of culture, so we have to make this change. After doing that, we can open the data, and now we see the data properly, meaning that we get the ID of the indicator, its name, the code, the nomenclature. Just remember that we call that nomenclature and not NATS, because at some point we will have data for other territorial nomenclatures. As I said, it might be cities, functional urban areas, urban morphological zones, local area units, and other elements. We have the level of the NATS, the version of the NATS, the territorial unit code. In this case, it's the NATS itself, NATS label, the name of the territorial unit, and then we have more elements, the sources for the data, and finally the data itself. In this case, we have data for year 2013, and here we have the values. Okay. This is the kind of data that you get, and with which then you can play. Tomorrow we'll see how to use this data to use it on a map and to maybe to compute other derivate indicators. For the time being, let's close that, and let's continue with the interface itself. So you've seen how we can download the data. Tomorrow you will see how to download and show the shapes also. We saw the raw data here. And now we are going to show also the other elements that allow you to have a quick visualization of the data. As Laurent has said, ESPON is all about maps, and ESPON itself has a specific toolbox that contains different systems that allow you to play with data, and they allow you also to prepare, let's say, fancier maps. What we have here, and that's the end goal of the user interface, is a quick way of having a look at the data, so that you can decide whether if the data is interesting to you or not, because you may be interested in the topic. In this case, we are talking about the number of green tech clusters per million inhabitants, and this might be a topic you're interested in, but you need to see whether data is covering the territory you are interested in too, because ESPON projects try to cover usually the whole of what we call the ESPON space, which is the EU28 plus other 4 countries, which is Norway, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, forgetting the 4th one now. But the idea is that even though most of the indicators will cover all this territory, in some cases it might not be the case. So in order to check whether you have all the data you need, and before downloading the CSV file, getting it into Excel and starting to make your own maps, if you are going to do that, or your graphics, then we offer you the possibility to have a quick look at what we have here. So the map data function needs you to pick a year for the data. In this case, we just have 2013 because this is the only year available for this specific indicator, and the nomenclature version. In this case, we just have NATS 2 2010. Once we do that, this button turns red. We can click it, and we can automatically see then a map with the data. Okay, this map is pre-configured. The user, for the time being, cannot change anything about it. We are considering about implementing maybe some specific controls that allow you maybe to change the classes or the colors. Although this is not the end goal of the platform, but it might help you to visualize data a bit better and help you decide whether you're interested in it or not before downloading it. As you may see here, we see a lot of gray areas, meaning that for those regions we don't have data, and we have some colors. Whenever we click on a region, we get information about that region, its name, its NUTS code, and the value we get for that specific indicator. The map can be zoomed in or zoomed out. Okay, so you can navigate a bit and you can specifically go and click to the element you're interested in and see what you get there. In any case, as I said, this is just a pre-visualization of the data. This is maybe not the best way of representing this data. That's why we offer you the chance to download the data and to prepare your own maps. Nevertheless, if you want, you can also click here and save this image, save an image of the map to insert it into a text, or you do with it whatever you need to. Okay, this is the map visualization. We won't be doing graphs with this indicator because we just have data for 1 year, so we cannot show a time series here. It would be just 1 point. Okay, we'll do that with another example. Okay, now we've seen the contents of the table. We have looked into one indicator in detail. Now let's remove this filter that we have here, and let's see about the advanced data filters. Here we have a button that when clicking it, we get a side panel that contains information of all the available filters in the system. As you see, there are many more items here than we have on the data table, because the data table is just a summary. But here we allow to filter our data by many more concepts. First of all, we have the theme, the thematic. By clicking here, we get a list of the available thematics on the database. Okay. They are broadly categorized similarly to what you may see, for instance, in Eurostat. Okay, this is the official classification for ESPON anyway. And we could just select any of these elements. Let's choose, for instance, environment and energy. And now we could just make a filter with this first element. We get down, we search for indicators, and now we will get the response for that specific selection. Now I click here, and this is the selection. At the top of the table, you see some breadcrumbs telling you about what you have done or what you have active on the view. In this case, we have this active search, which is thematic, environment, and energy. And the system has found 240 results related to that specific thematic. Mind you that an indicator might have several thematics attached to it, so it's not a single element available. Now, if we want to filter a bit more data, we could go down to see about the territorial nomenclature. Here we have the list of all different elements that will be available at some point. Right now, we just have data for NUTS. If you choose any of the other ones, the system will return you 0 elements because we don't have anyone recorded yet in the system. So the idea is that you select the NUTS, and for NUTS, you select also the level. In this case, we can stick with NUTS 3. We could now launch a search, and we would filter the elements that we have already here for environment energy, also for NUTS 3. We also have the filter for the project. This might not be so relevant to you directly, but if you are aware of a specific ESPON project that you are interested in, this allows you to filter out all the indicators related to that specific project. For instance, it might be this one, ESPON climate. So we select that, and we will get a filter of all these elements combined. Another possibility is to narrow down your search to certain years. you can select a start year and you can select an end year. For instance, getting indicators that have data for this period from 1990 to 2017. If an indicator has data for other years other than those, it will be shown too, but we make sure when we apply the filter that at least the indicator does have data for this specific period that has been selected. So let's make another search to narrow it down. And in this case, we have no results. Let's change, let's change the theme instead from environment and energy to economy. And let's narrow it to NUTS 2. Okay, we get nothing yet. Let's clear the search and restart the search again. Okay, we have everything again. Well, in any case, you can make any kind of combination you want to narrow the results down. We have two more elements here I want to show you. One of it is the indicators. This allows you to filter out indicators by typology. If you remember, one of the first elements I showed you when we started was that the indicators are divided between base, key, and background indicators. Here you can filter them out. So you might go for the key indicators just to get information of the most relevant elements that are produced in the ESPON projects. Let's see how many we have here now. This is one of the things I was referring at the start. The performance of the system is now not so good, as you may see, because these searches should not take so long, but we will improve that, of course. Now we got 368 results, so roughly a bit more than half of the indicators in the system are key results from the different ESPON projects. One last element here is the standard data. Standard data can be yes or no. What does that mean? Results from ESPON projects that go to the database usually have a structure linked to territorial units, which is usually NUTS, but as I said, it might be other things like functional urban areas or local area units or others. But it occurs sometimes that a specific indicator which is not divided into these territorial units, this is standardized territorial units, is also a relevant result for the project, and it has to be uploaded to the system too. But in this case, it will be flagged as non-standard data. Let me show you the different non-standard indicators that we have now. We filter by no standard search, and we will get a narrow list of results now. Okay, you see that we have 32 elements here, and each one of these elements, when you try to open it, you see that the interface has changed. We don't have the option to explore the data because the data is not in a standard format to prepare a map or to do a graphic. And by downloading the data, you might get different results depending on each one of the indicators you select. Downloads of these items might take some time because sometimes they are quite big. Okay, but it is that when you download one of these elements, you might get, for instance, a specific shapefile which is not in the NUTS format. For instance, for the Natura 2000 sites here, this was used as a background indicator for the preparation of a key indicator on a given project. Here you will get the shapefile of the Natura 2000 sites. okay, which is something that you might find elsewhere, of course, but it was used in the preparation of one of these ESPON projects, so we also have it here on the database. As I said, it might take some time to get this data because sometimes the files are quite big. Besides from shape files, you might also find grid, that is raster sets, so images that contain the data for a specific area in Europe or for the whole Europe at different resolutions. Okay, as you see, it takes some time, so let's forget about it now. Let's click out and cancel this option. Okay, so now we have seen all the possible options for filtering out data. We'll clear that again. And now I'm just going to show you a couple more examples. One that I want to show you first is another, let's say, typical ESPON kind of indicator. That, let me just use the search. Okay. The indicator I'm going to show you now is part of a project that tried to identify peripheral regions that are within Europe. Usually, periphery refers to places that are geographically very far away. But in this case, the project was about finding these possible inner peripheries. So these regions within Europe that shouldn't be periphery, but they are in a practical sense according to their accessibility to services of general interest. So this project produced several data sets. Here we have the identification of the different inner peripheries according to access to several services. Let's focus on jobs. So we click on jobs, we go to explore data, and we can just check, select 1 year and one version. In this case is NUTS 3. And I show you the kind of indicators that you might get here, that, as I said, are quite unique and that you won't find anywhere else. Okay, now we get the map. So this map shows us if we were to click into any of the values. Okay, now it's not responding. It should be responding. In any case, the values related to this map could be either 0, 1, or 2. If we go to the metadata of the indicator, we'll see the specific values. And it shows us painted in yellow and in red the regions that are to be considered inner peripheries, so places that are having not such a good accessibility to, in this case, to jobs. Okay, this is one of the results of this project, and it allows you to identify this kind of elements. Now let's go to another element that is missing here, which is the graphic for the time series. So let's select something that has a long time series. For instance, this first indicator, aging index of total population. And here, if we go to explore data, we see that for the graphics, for the quick graphics, we have 3 elements to select. First, the code. The code is the territorial unit that we want to graph. Right now, we only allow for graphing 1 element at the same time. We can type in whatever we want or select something from the drop-down list. Okay, so if I wanted to go to my region, I would say Catalonia, and here I have it. So I would select my region. If you know the nuts code of your region, you can also type it and the system will find it. You see that the button turned red because we just need that code to make a graphic of the data. If you want, you can also narrow down the years by selecting something here in the year start and the year end. On this drop-down list, you will always get the information that is available for that indicator. So you do not have to despair, meaning that sometimes in some of these interfaces you get the whole list of possible elements, but many of them usually have no data. In this case, we have narrowed down the available elements to the ones that do have data. So if I click here now, what I get is this graphic that shows me the evolution, in this case, of the aging index of total population, okay, in percent. And I just can put the mouse over the line to get specific values for specific years. Again, similarly to what happens with the map, this is not something that you can customize. It's predefined in its format, color, width, and so on. We think that it should be enough to get you an idea of what you get on the data before downloading it. It allows you to see, for instance, if this time series might have or not a break for a given year. As I said, we try to get complete data sets, but it might happen that for a specific territorial unit and for a given year, we don't have data for that. And if it has not been filled in using statistical methods, which is not the case for all the indicators, we might see a hole here. And well, maybe we are interested specifically for that year, and then we will know that this data set is not useful for us. Okay, that for the graphic, and let me show you one last element of the main data interface, which does not appear always, which is this little guy here. Sorry, no, it disappeared. Let me see. I don't have it here. Okay. I thought this was the good example. Sorry. Yeah, we have it here. Okay. No, again, it disappeared. Sorry, I had. Yeah, here we have. So for certain indicators, when it is available, and it will be available in principle for all the indicators produced in the newer ESPON projects, we keep track on the system of how each indicator was produced, and we call that genealogy because whenever it is available, you get this tab that you can click, and it shows you your indicator, how was it calculated? Well, it doesn't show you the specific formulas, but it tells you about the indicators that were used to compute the derivate indicator that you are seeing. Okay. In some cases, it might seem quite evident, but nevertheless, we think it's a good practice to keep track of this. Also because it allows us to prepare a kind of interactive map of indicators. I could, just by clicking in each one of the parents, I could go to that indicator interface. So if I go to Natura 2000 sites, I click here, and I get to the window of that indicator, to the Natura 2000 sites. Okay. So the idea is that everything is interconnected, and that you get several ways of navigating through the available elements on the interface. Okay, now we've seen all the different features of the main data section. We just have two more elements to review, which are two other sections. One of it is the project archives. This project archive section is a similar table to the one that we've already seen, that contains the information about the different ESPON projects that are available on the database. So as soon as a project is finished, its indicators are uploaded to the system on the main data section, and then a project archive is produced and added to this table. Again, this is something that is automatically populated with the contents of the database. So every time you get in the system, you will get all the new elements automatically. For each one of the rows, we have information, specific information for one individual project. You get the name of the project, a link that you can click on it, and it will take you to the page, the specific page for that project within the ESPON website. This is quite useful when you want to know more about one specific project and how a certain indicator was calculated. You can get here, and by scrolling down, you get the list of all the different reports associated to that specific project. Okay, so here you will get all the information you need, scientific information needed for understanding the indicators that you have seen on the database. You also get an abstract that usually it's not so short, so we have abbreviated it, and just by clicking on it, you get a new window that shows you all the elements associated with that abstract, which is a list, for instance, of all the different indicators that were produced and are associated to that specific project. You could copy this text and paste it anywhere if you need. We have the date in which the project was uploaded, and we can download the information associated to it. So by clicking here, I'm going to get, in this case, a much bigger zip file that will contain all the information related to the project. So this is a way of making a bulk download of all the information associated to the project. The structure is usually the one that you're seeing here. So you have main data section and other data section. In this case, for other data, we have nothing. We have a README file that we've already seen. It summarizes what we have here. And on the main data section, we get a zip file for each one of the individual indicators of the project. So by just opening any one of them, you get the same kind of contents that you get by downloading the individual indicators, the CSV in this case, sorry, the metadata in both formats and so on. So this is the kind of information you can get for a project. So if you're really interested in a certain project, you can get all of its data at the same time by downloading that. Okay. As we have, well, now we have just 18 elements, but we will get many more in the future. So in order to facilitate the way of navigating here, we have a general filter section here that works on all the fields at the same time. So if I type in something like economy, then I'm getting here now all the projects that we have registered in the system that have to do with economy, or at least that they have the word economy either in their name or in their abstract. Okay, so you can filter things out. You can also sort any of the columns here alphabetically by abstract, by date, okay, or by name. That's in relation to the project archives, which is a complementary information on the indicators itself. And then we have the resources. The resources section includes different files that might be useful for preparing maps using also the data that you have on the main data section. So by downloading an indicator, you can use some of these elements that we have here in the resources section to prepare maps. Okay. Mainly we have here the different layers and map kits that ESPON uses. Unfortunately, these map kits will not, at least not all of them, will not be available to the general public. Okay, right now you can see them there, but the idea is that the interface will end having, as you see on the top right corner, a login system that allows you to access restricted information. Okay, usually if you are working on a project for ESPON, you have this kind of access, and you can get these resources. If not, well, you will see the resources that are available to the general public. Okay. Again, this is a table that contains a name, an abstract for the information it contains, its type, whether it's a map kit or technical document or other relevant elements that are stored here. The date when it was produced, and a link to different data associated to this specific item. Again, this is a summary in the abstract, so if you click, you can see a longer description of the elements you have here. Okay, and again, by downloading any one of these elements, well, you get different results depending on what you are downloading. Just in case, we have added here the size of the download, because some elements might be quite big. For instance, the OLAP cubes are let's say quite big in this case. Okay. All of these three areas, the main data, the project archives, and the resources, will be filled in with the new data. As I said at the beginning, the system is not yet completely finished. We have to iron out some problems, put the system into the production server to improve the performance of the system. But let's say the main bulk of the application is already here, and is ready for you to, in this case, to pre-test, so to say. Okay, so that's all from my side. That's all the contents of the system, and I guess that now we could start the questions, and the ones you may have written down already, or the ones that you may ask now by raising your hands. So thank you all.
Thank you, Efren. Thank you very much for your presentation. So as you said, indeed, we will now give the floor to any questions or comments or feedback about the content and functionalities about this open portal from the audience. So as said before, you can write it directly under the chat tab or the questions tab, or we can also give you the floor if you press the raise hand option to unmute your microphone, and you can ask your question directly. Okay, we have received already first question that was answered by Martin, but it might be relevant to all the participants, which was what is the most detailed scale available? Efren, if you like to.
Yeah, well, let's say that there's not a common answer here. It depends on the indicator, but the most detailed one might be local area units, so municipality. But don't expect that for all the indicators. This will be available only on certain data sets. Usually the most common detail scale we have is NUTS3. But again, this is not available for all the indicators. That depends a bit on which which indicator we are referring to. But let's say that there is not a specific constraint to which level of detail we can attain. So the system will allow for very detailed information whenever it is available as an output of an ESPON project.
Thank you, Efren. Yeah, Martin.
Yes, so as I wrote, also we have some grid data available. It depends on the indicator. Most of the content is at NUTS 3 and NUTS 2 levels, but for some particular indicators we have LAO2 data and grid data. For case studies, we might have very specific data, but it depends on whether it's in the area of your interest. So it can be for a particular city.
Okay, thanks, Martin, for your clarification. We can now give the floor to. We have 3 hands raised. We'll give the floor. So to the first one, Sylvie Oceli, I will unmute your microphone and you can ask your question directly. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation, and it was very interesting. My question is very trivial in fact, and I wonder how can we access the ESPON database? Maybe I missed the information, but it's not clear to me if, as a researcher in a public research institute, how can I access this data platform?
Yeah, okay. The answer, luckily, is very simple. You will get a link to the database in the ESPON portal. So it will be open to the public, the access of the data. As I said, some specific information might be restricted, but the bulk of it will be available online just by clicking on a specific link. You will get the same interface I've been showing now, and there's that. You can use the data there. Just by crediting it properly, but it will be available to everyone.
Okay, thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So yes, the current yes. So the currently when you are navigating through the website, you will find the link to the old website. So if you go to the espon.eu, there is on the top left-hand side in the blue bar, there is menus. There is I believe it's data and maps, or is it toolbox? Just need to open it, and there you can access the current or the old ESPON database. This database version, as you see from the URL from the presentation, this is still currently under development and located in the developers' servers, and hopefully in a couple of months, when we finalize the user interface, then we will make an announcement, and this will be available from our website as well. In the meanwhile, as you have the link, you will be able to test and explore the data on the developers site as well.
Okay, thank you, Martin. We have another question from Maria del Sorbo. I will give you the floor to ask your question directly.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. Okay. Hi. Thank you so much for the presentation. I found the tools very. I mean, it has a big potential for me. I have a question about the resources window. I'm not sure I got what actually you can find in it. So, what type of documents actually you can find inside? Because, for example, for the window of the project archives, it's clear to me that I can find projects, but in the resources, I'm not sure I got what actually I can expect. before diving in? Thank you.
Yes, so in the resources, we have certain information that is relevant mostly for the ESPON projects, namely, let's say, you already saw a little bit that there are items called map kits and so on. Most of the map kits are meant for our projects because they contain the layout and the corporate identity that we want to see incorporated in our maps. There will be also a publicly available map kit available. So those of you that are puzzled with the word, maybe, the map kit is a map template. So we have predefined projection and predefined set of layers for our projects, but also for the general public to use if you want to produce a map in a let's say quick and easy way, and perhaps if you are struggling to find the right geographic data that you would need to produce a map presenting data at European level. Also, we have other, let's say, data-related tools there. So you heard Efrain referring to something that is called OLAP Cube. OLAP cubes were developed in the previous program, and we are working on elaborating on another tool for that, which is a kind of an overlay tool which would allow you to transfer or allow you to do estimations for certain data for let's say if you have data at NUTS 2 level, but you would like to have the data transferred to NUTS 3. You, of course, need to be the decision maker there, whether it makes sense for that particular data set. But there are methods where you can, for example, apply the population grid to recalculate statistics that are presented on a more aggregate level to disaggregate them. So these types of resources are there, and also all the methodologies that we have developed for harmonizing data sets, for doing other types of data estimations. For example, if you have time series and if you are missing a data for a certain year, how could you go about in your data estimations? So I hope this would answer your question.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We will now give the floor to another question from Grazina Svorek. You can ask your question. Thank you. Hello, Grazina Svorek. I don't know if you can unmute your microphone is already unmuted. Can you try? Okay. Let's go then to the next question we have received from Andrea De Toni. If you'd like to ask your questions, or I can read it out loud as you prefer.
Thank you. Thank you for this presentation. I think that this database portal is quite impressive. And are these data validated or not? Because I think that, for example, for inner peripheries, there are also data that are at pixel level, and you have got it only at NUTS 3, NUTS 2, or NUTS 0, or have we got it also at pixel level, and if there is a kind of validation. Thank you.
Yes, the data sets go through different types of validation steps. So there are automatic and semi-automatic steps in place for the data uploader. and all the upload procedure is also supported by the database experts that are working for the project. So it checks that you have entered all the data correctly, that you are using the right type when you are entering specific data in order for it to understand that whether it's integer or doubles or syntaxes. Also, it checks the same things for the metadata, that all the information is correctly presented where it should be. If anything is missing, it raises flags. If anything is inserted incorrectly, it raises flags. And also it does, I believe it does. I believe it's called outlier checks. To highlight, I mean, outliers are not necessarily errors in the data sets, but it alerts the user when it encounters radically different values from the in comparison to the general values.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just something else. In relation to the example you just mentioned about the inner peripheries, indeed we do have data on the database already at pixel level. So there are some grids related to that were the output of the project, and if available, you will find them also on the database.
Okay, thank you, Efren. I will now give the floor to Serena Drufuca for her question. Or I can also read your question out loud. So the question is, among the map kit available in the resources section, which is the one used for standard maps?
Maybe a specification would be needed for what is meant for standard maps. So in ESPON, most of the maps that we do, we use two types of map kits. One of them are targeted specifically for the ESPON space, which is the EU 28 countries plus the 4 EFTA countries: Norway, Iceland, Switzerland, and Liechtenstein. In addition, we have a slightly wider map kit, which also presents the geographical data for the Western Balkan countries and includes Turkey, because in many cases these countries are also collaborating with the Commission in terms of that they have made some agreements also to provide statistical data to Eurostat. So we are using that data whenever possible to give as wide perspective on Europe as possible. In addition, we have developed some more custom-made map kits that focus on macro regions or which show Europe in a wider context. So also looking into what is happening in parts of Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, and also the neighboring countries across the Mediterranean, so the Northern African countries. And finally, the global map kit, which we use to show what happens in Europe in a global context. All of these map kits you can apply different types of layers. given what type of statistical data you are interested in. So we have the geographical data for all the NUTS versions. I will talk about this in my tomorrow's presentation a little bit more, but if you, let's say, are interested in mapping some of the more older European statistics that correspond, let's say, to NUTS 6 version, you are able to do so as well. But we have also the current versions that are in use the most at the moment, namely NUTS 2013 and now NUTS 2016, which is quite a new thing. Also, we have the LAU2 regions that correspond to the census years. We have functional urban areas and some point layers for cities as well. I hope, please feel free to add any additional questions if I misunderstood the question.
Okay. So I think we have one last question. Grazina, I don't know if you want to ask it yourself or I can read it out loud. Okay. So the question is, and I'm going to read it. Can we use ESPON data to compare the development of cities on various population levels? Example, large cities, medium or small?
I think we don't have anything better than I think you might find this data more relevant data at the moment from the functional urban areas database that is available at the Eurostat. We have data, population data on cities, but as we haven't had any newer projects focusing on this aspect, we don't have the newest data. What we do have is city data in a let's say more functional level in the metropolitan areas, which are either a single NUTS 3 region or a combination of several NUTS 3 regions, which correspond to the bigger metropolitan areas. And there you can make a comparison between, let's say, the capital cities and the second tier cities. It does not include the smaller cities specifically.
Okay, thank you, Martin. I think it's our last question from the audience today.
But just sorry, I have a technical question to see the questions. Because I currently have the question window very small for me in my screen. So have we read all the questions from the audience that are posted there or not?
Yes, yes, we have read all the questions out loud. So for the moment, we don't have any okay. Other. So if we don't have any other question, I would just like to say a few words. So we will expect to see you all tomorrow. I would still like to give the floor to Martin to show you a little bit more about what to expect for tomorrow's session, and in the follow-up email we can share you today the link where you can download the free GIS software to your computers that we will be used tomorrow to facilitate you following the session and testing yourself what is being presented. Martin, would you like to?
Yes, so hopefully you are all available to meet us again tomorrow. Tomorrow we are engaging in a more, let's say, hands-on experiment where we are downloading data sets from the ESPON database portal, and we are applying ESPON public map kit, which you can freely use to produce your own statistical analysis at European level. So, and to do that, we will explore a little bit a free-to-use GIS software called QGIS, which for the download, you need to download this and install the software beforehand. So if you are able to do it today or tomorrow morning before the session, that would be the best thing to do. In this case, if you're interested in participating, because we have quite packed agenda and we don't have too much time to start installing this while we are running the webinar.
Thank you, Martin. Yes, indeed. So we are sharing with you the link to download, and if you wish to install it, as Martin was saying before the session next morning, would be great. So I think we have no more questions from today. Just a technical. We are going to receive a feedback form automatically by email after the end of this session and also after the end of the session tomorrow. We kindly ask you if you could answer it to give us your feedback and your opinion about this session. We thank you all for your participation and interest, and hope to see you all live tomorrow morning at the same time, starting at 10 a.m. Central European time. Thank you from our side. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.